I first heard Tony's music when I was about 27 years old, and I heard it through a group called the Stag McMahon Trio, which was one of the preeminent jazz harmonica groups. And the story goes that the arrangements that Tony was writing for this group, who was playing on the Milton Berle show, Ed Sullivan show, etc., was only 15 years old, and they were just outstanding arrangements. That was my first introduction to Tony.
And then how did you come in contact with Tony?
I went on Holland America cruise lines and played with a group of trio harmonica players, then began to rehearse and play the Tony Luisi arrangements on the cruises. Well, I was so struck with the arrangements that I mentioned to the group that, we ought to find this guy, Tony Luisi, and we ought to do an album with him. And the group members said, well, no, we're so busy right now that we don't have the time to do that. And I said, well, then I guess you wouldn't mind if I went and found him myself. Well, then began a 1 year long search on the internet to find this guy. And my last clue was through Joe Renzetti, who had done some music with him on Electric Tommy. And Joe told me where he lived, and I finally was able to run Tony down. It was then that I called Tony and began our association. Tony was retired when I met him. And to get him to do an album with me was a very, very difficult thing. He just didn't want to do it. He had had a recording studio. People had owed him a lot of money. And he was a rather passive type of guy, and he wouldn't go chase them like maybe you or I would. So Tony had this great love for his brother, John Luisi. And of course, up until this time, he still wouldn't do any music with me. This was the test song. And the name of the song was Qiana. That was an original that he wrote. He rearranged it and changed some things in it and sent it to me. So I did it. But in one section of it, I changed something to my liking. And I sent it to Tony. And he says, first of all, he says, Tom, he says, let's do an album together. I like what you did. He says, but I want to tell you something about something you did somewhere here. I didn't write it that way. And I want it played the way that I wrote it. And I want you to remember that. And anything that I write, if I write it, you play it. That's your job. And that was coming from a very mild man. I wasn't about to let the opportunity slip by when he said, I'm going to send you a song. I said, boy, it better be right.
So how did you record your album with Tony? How did that work? East West, right?
Right, and that hence he named the album East-West Collaboration. And the way it was done is the tracks for his part were done on the East Coast, and then they were sent to me on a CD, and then I went into the studio and did my part of them, and then we merged them.
And
So there were no actual live sessions where Tony and I played live together. We did play live together at a show back east one time as a duo, but not as a recording session.
wow, where was that?
I believe it was in New Jersey.
Okay, that's where he lived,
Was
right?
that yeah, it was a harmonica convention, and I drove back there and I rented a car and picked him up. He was a man of little means, that's for sure.
Hmm. So, what was that like playing live with him?
Oh, it was wonderful, and the audience reaction was wonderful. In fact, that was that particular performance got me my first concert performance in China.
Hmm.
A young Chinese player, very famous and is now a very, very good friend, classical harmonica player, Jia He, came up to me and he says, "Would you like to go to China and play?" And I looked at him like, "Are you crazy?" You know, I thought it was a joke. It wasn't.
Wow.
And hence started a great relationship in a lot of Asia work.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is all amazing, especially when you understand that his right hand was quite atrophied, and he was able to use it to a point. He could lift his hand up to the keyboard and play.
Hmm.
But on my album, he used only his left hand.
Amazing.
That to me is amazing.
Yeah.
Tony was really a musical genius, and at about 10 years old, Tony had played the trumpet, but he contracted polio, and in those days, what they did was they put the kids in an iron lung to get them well. Well, when Tony came out, he was somewhat limited on what he could do with some of his limbs and could not play trumpet anymore. He was right-handed. So Tony decided to study piano. And of course, he had a great teacher in his brother, John Luisi, who was ahead of him and was doing shows on a national and international basis. So it was then that Tony started going through the music and learning it and really doing a great job. But life didn't have very good turns for him medically. He had a lot of issues. He could not use his right arm. He was somewhat awkward in walking, and he had some other maladies as the years passed on, and which his wife Jean looked after. So we had decided after a very, very long conversation and ordeal to do an album together. And I would say probably about halfway through that album, Tony got real sick again and was put into the hospital. And he had a rather rare condition. And had a double mastectomy when he was in the hospital, plus other issues. As soon as he came out of the hospital, the very same day he got out of the hospital, he went down to the recording room and he wrote an original song which he named Dialogue. And he sent it to me to play. And I said, "Well, this is really very nice." I says, "But tell me about the word dialogue. Why did you choose dialogue for the name of the song?" He says, "Well, Tom," he says, "we've had such great conversations during the past year or so." And he says, "I just wanted to put that down in music. And this was our dialogue." Hence the name of the song, Dialogue. last one was a genius piece called How High the Moon and Beautiful Dreamer. And he loves his brother's version of Beautiful Dreamer.
Mm.
But the signature song of the Stag McMahon Trio was How High the Moon that Tony Luisi had written. And I said, Tony, and it had a little signature phrase in it. And I said, Tony, I says, why don't we do that and we'll make it today. He says, what I want to do, he says, is I want to combine Beautiful Dreamer and How High the Moon. And I said, how the hell are you going to do that? He said, I'll do it. He did it.
Wow.
And he used the signature phrase, da 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 da, right at the end. At the very last, you'll hear the signature phrase of what he did with the Stag McMahon Trio.
Tell me about that song you sent me, Harmonia.
Harmonia, it's a beautiful piece. It's very, very esoteric. Really takes in the mood of Tony, especially. I have a lot of his other original recordings other than the NFL, and it really kind of takes in his feel. And he wrote me an email and he says, "I'm sending you something," and he says, "You may not like it when you hear it, but the more you play it, the more you will like it." So how true it was. The more I played it, the more I liked it. I think it was four harmonicas, and Tony on his keyboard and also on his flute, and just a beautiful piece. So having three or four harmonicas, of course, I had to overdub and play back to myself, record a part, then come back in and record the second part, the third part, etc. And in one particular instance, he had written a part for a bass harmonica, which was absolutely horrible to pull it off smoothly because of the configuration of the harmonica and make it sound like I knew Tony wanted it to sound. So I substituted it with what they call a bass polyphonia, which was much easier to handle in a lot of ways, but really a chore to do. And I probably worked a full day getting that particular part recorded. But Harmonia, I just love the song.
And when was that?
Well, it had to appear probably, my guess was probably maybe 10 years ago.
Hmm. Did you say it was the last piece of music he had done, I thought, or not?
That was the last piece of music that Tony wrote, last piece of music that Tony composed, last piece of music that he played on. Well, you think about Tony, he was he never talked about his personal greatness with me. He never, in
Mm,
other words, he never lauded it.
mm-hmm,
And and when you went to his house, he had a basement, as typical East Coast houses are, that filled up with water in the winter that he had to have a pump on. But you went downstairs into his little studio. I got a couple of pictures of his little studio downstairs. You just wonder how this man did all this stuff. I mean, and he was so intense. He just and never once did I ask him when's it going to be ready. That would be that that would be a death threat as far as I'm concerned. I just when you're ready, you're ready. So
yeah.
I don't know. I do miss him. I do miss what we did together, and I miss when we finished this album. He was really pretty sick, and we're talking about music, and he had just done Harmonia, and I says, well, do you have anything left? He says, oh, I think I got one more album left in me. And I says, okay, let's do it. And he says, okay. Well, as things happened, he called up and he said, I just can't do it anymore, Tom. I says, okay, Tony. I says, we'll just go on. And I kept the friendship after that, all the way through up until the day he died.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Sounds like you guys were partners, creative collaborators in every sense. Even when you were in China and he's in America and you're touring, you were still very close. Sounds like.
Absolutely. I never I tried to make sure that I called Tony every week. And of course, he would tell me, I can't talk right now. I'm watching a football game. He knows love for football. And I said,
Probably the
okay, I'll
Eagles,
call
I
you
bet.
later on. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, and he had this quaint little house, and then on the back they had a patio that was converted to kind of a TV watching room, and that's he'd sit back there and he'd watch it.
uh,
So there are a lot of stories. Tony's equipment was getting aged, and I was able to do a lot of nice things for him on his equipment and keyboards and stuff like that.
huh. So, what do you think his friendship meant to you after hearing about him years ago and then getting to collaborate with him?
Well, obviously, I was highly honored. He was at the top of the harmonica world in terms of his arranging, his association with Lou Rawls, association with the Tony Lewis Trio. Uh, I was I was overwhelmed that I was humbled. How could I be in the company of such a great man? And I'd only wished that Pud McCaskey, who was a great friend, who introduced me to Tony Luisi, I just wish he would have been around to see what happened after he passed. Uh, the album that I did with Tony was probably the greatest opportunity, the greatest music I've ever played. Uh, we sold a lot of albums. It got me a lot of jobs. And interestingly, when I would get a job in China or something based upon Tony's album, I would split my performance fee with him.
Hmm.
I knew that he was a man of very meager means, so I would give him half of my pay
Wow.
in thanks for what he did. And of
Wow.
course, when we sold albums, I paid him. I kept everything as straight as I could for this man, which I think went a long way in keeping our relationship together. Because him and his wife came to me one day when I was over there visiting him. I think I went to his house twice. Said to me, "Why couldn't you have come along earlier in our life?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Yeah, that goes for me too. Why couldn't you have come along earlier in my life?" But
Hmm.
I was able to demonstrate to the music community that I could play beautifully if given the chance, and Tony gave me the chance. And I've done since then. I've done these 6 or 7 albums with other composers and arrangers, And every time I do an album with these guys, I say, "Oh my God, what did I have in Tony?"
What was it that you think was so unique about Tony, in your view?
Well, Tony's musical mind was genius. Tony told me one time. He said, "There's all these guys get out there in jazz and they play all these fast and long lines." He says, "That's not where I'm at." He says, "Where I'm at is playing a line that's beautiful and has some meaning to it." So his conception of chords and progression just blows me away. And his ability to compose. I mean, this guy, he wrote all of the background music for a museum in Alabama,
Hmm.
in addition to the NFL. And these were all instant compositions. So you listen to what he composed and where it went, and then you listen to his improvisation on his records and when he had the Tony Lewis Trio. The man was genius, but he was the most mild-mannered man you ever wanted to meet. Talk to him on the phone, it was a struggle. It was like you had to reach through the phone line and pull the words out of his mouth. But you'd meet with him and you'd go out and have breakfast with him. He was so euphoric. He was aggressive. He was just a nice man to be with, and it was just a pleasure.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember when I first contacted you, you would send an email to Tony. Tony would send an email back to you. Then you'd forward the email back to me. And I remember you writing, "This is how Tony wants it to be." And, I can't change that.
Hmm.
But I think it sounds like that was part of that, direct contact. Um,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
It's interesting, Tim. I've shared more about Tony with you than I have anybody,
Hmm.
and it's been really a very, very nice conversation.
Yeah, that's great. Over the years, I've kept track of all that and thought about it and didn't know where it would all go, where it would lead. But I think it's leading to something very interesting now. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, this was perfect, Tom. I appreciate it.
Well, you're
And
welcome.
have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye bye now.